Hi everybody, Dave here. Final Dream, we really eclectic it up with another batch of fascinating 12-inch platters that I've been listening to recently or bought recently for your consideration. Starting off with an old favourite, The Wave. Half of them at least is an old favourite. Well, she's not that old. Rose Eleanor Dougal and Graham Coxon together. Not only musically but also romantically, of course, nowadays, as The Wave. Signed, red vinyl from Rough Trade. Well worth every penny. Another very listenable album. Gets better every time you listen to it, which is always a good sign of a great record. Stretched out over 2 albums, which gives the sound quality its best chance to come through. The second half of it so far, I think, is much better than the first, which only goes to emphasize more that it gets better as it goes on. It builds. Possibly it's been composed and put together in that way. I'm not sure. But that's a grower, and it's already at number 9 on the scale anyway. So very, very good. Now, a few records that I've dug out from my second-hand collection. This is the Statlers, formerly the Statler Brothers. Often seen with, back in the day, backing up Johnny Cash as his vocal backing group. Obviously an established act on their own. And this is a compilation album from about 1982. And it's got probably the best known song on it, which is Flowers on the Wall, much beloved by Tarantino, of course. And that's obviously an excellent song. But the thing about these tunes, many of which, if not all, they've written themselves, is that they come across very genuine for, country songs. How many really, really, really good country songs have there been? Maybe 100. I'd say possibly less than 50. If some of these songs were sung by Dolly Parton or Tom Jones a few years ago, people like that, they would sound very corny. But because they're actually sung by the people that came up with them, and obviously heartfelt songs, the sentimentality of them is kind of much more genuine, and they're just so much more meaningful. And every song is like a real diamond. So I can highly recommend the Statlers. That's on Country Store Music Limited. Actually, it's on Star and Blend Records. Pretty obscure thing from the early 80s, but it is British. The man himself, this is a kind of mid-60s compilation. It's got some great tracks on it. None of the old rock and rollers, more the kind of mid-60s and before he went completely sort of pop. So there's some interesting productions on this, actually, when you really listen to them. Things like Blue Turns to Grey is an amazing track when you turn it up loud. And some, obviously, Congratulations is a bit of a signature tune of ours. And his personal selection for the album, it says here, is Neil Diamond's Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, another Tarantino connection there. And that's a bit of a bizarre track for Cliff, but certainly pulls it off very well. So that, if you ever see that in a charity shop or second-hand racks, pick it up for a couple of quid. This is another one, the second-hand jazz or New Orleans jazz. Al Hirt and Pete Fountain. I think I've heard these names before, but I didn't really know much about them. No jazz expert, but I do like to listen from time to time. And this is a good, obviously, rave up New Orleans jazz. It's live, a double live album from the mid-70s when the Super Bowl was in New Orleans, and this was a concert that took place to celebrate that. So there's a great atmosphere on it, and it's on Monument Records, which is, I didn't know it had jazz on it. It's more of a sort of country rock and roll label as far as I know. Roy Orbison's label, of course, Monument. So interesting label for a bit of New Orleans jazz to come up on. And that's a good old tear up of a record as well. That's called Super Jazz. This one I picked up in rough trade at the just after record store day. It was in the leftover bin for record store day, and I don't think it should have been. I have to double check that, but I'm sure this wasn't a record store day record. Someone had just dropped it in there. It's a reissue of a psychedelic classic, Eden's Children, eponymous, on Cosmic Rock Records. What it says on the tin, what you'd expect: great, solid, psychedelic rock. You can't go wrong. A very good example of its genre, and we'll be playing that live. There's some description, I can assure you. Another record, this was a record store day record, but I held off buying it because it was incredibly expensive, I thought. I think it was about £53 with the RRP for this, which is really pushing it a bit for some songs that have been out in other formats before. But saw it at a good price, snapped it up online somewhere. Record store day record, as it says there. The faces, all the BBC sessions. Got it for about 30 quid in the end, I think. Clear vinyl. Beautifully pressed. Sounds great. Are the session versions better than the recorded versions? That's for you to decide. There's not really much between them, I don't think. But this is a great atmosphere on some of these, and also some interesting sort of artifacts you can hear from BBC Radio 1 in its early days as well, which is pretty cool actually. And a bit of a wild card. This is from 1970. This was recorded on the 1st of December 1970 in San Francisco, Fillmore East. No, that's probably in New York, the Fillmore East, isn't it? Fillmore West is San Francisco. It's an organ concert, but with an early digital organ. Virgil Fox is the organist, and I shall read from the back of the cover. Most of the spectators had never seen an organ concert. They sat in frozen wonder as the virtuoso performed mad digital feats. Beyond him, a spectacular widescreen light show blazed. At the end of every piece, the audience rose movingly in spontaneous ovation. Heavy organ amazed everyone. No one imagined that the hard rock Fillmore audience would fill a theatre and make a non-swinging organist playing ancient music its new superstar. Pick it up if you find it in a second-hand bin. Worth every penny. Okay, that's all from me for the time being. Back with some more news in the near future. Cheers for now.